The first time someone called me just the nanny. I was standing outside Whitmore Academy waiting to pick up my niece Lily. It was my second week doing school pickup, and I was still getting used to the sea of luxury SUVs and designer handbags that dominated the carpool line. I was wearing jeans and a sweater from Target, standing next to my 10-year-old Honda Civic, when I overheard two mothers talking behind me. "See that girl over there? The one with the beat-up car? Oh, the nanny? I heard the Ashfords hired someone young. Probably paying her nothing. Well, you get what you pay for. Look at those clothes." They weren't wrong about the clothes. I'd been shopping at thrift stores and discount retailers since college, not because I had to, but because I'd never seen the point in spending hundreds of dollars on designer labels. My father had raised me to be practical, to understand the value of money, to never flaunt wealth. What those mothers didn't know was that my last name was Harrison, as in Harrison Industries, as in the billionaire tech mogul whose face graced the cover of Forbes magazine every few years. I was Alexander Harrison's daughter. I just didn't advertise it. When my sister Jenna died in a car accident 6 months earlier, I'd moved back to the city to help care for my 8-year-old niece Lily. Jenna's husband had fallen apart after the funeral, drinking heavily and disappearing for days at a time. Eventually, he'd signed over temporary custody to me and checked himself into rehab. I could have hired a dozen nannies, enrolled Lily in boarding school, or moved her to a different city entirely. Instead, I rented a modest apartment near her school, took a leave of absence from my job at a nonprofit in Seattle, and tried to give her as much stability as possible. That meant doing the normal things her mother used to do. School pickup, parent-teacher conferences, playdates. It also meant dealing with the other parents at Whitmore Academy, an elite private school where tuition cost more than most people's annual salary. The parents there fell into two categories: old money families who'd been sending their children to Whitmore for generations, and new money tech entrepreneurs who wanted their kids to rub shoulders with the elite. Both groups had one thing in common: they judged people based on appearance, car brands, and zip codes. Within a month, I'd been firmly categorized as the help. Parents would nod politely but never engage in real conversation. They'd discuss playdate schedules around me, but never include Lily. At school events, I'd overhear comments about that poor girl's situation and whispers about whether I was qualified to raise a child from such a good family. The irony was that most of these parents had no idea who Jenna had been married to. Her husband, David Ashford, came from old pharmaceutical money, but he'd kept a low profile. When Jenna died, the obituary mentioned surviving family, but didn't elaborate on connections. So when parents saw me, young, casually dressed, driving an old car, they made assumptions. And I let them. The truth was I preferred anonymity. I'd grown up watching my father navigate the complications of extreme wealth. The fake friendships, the constant requests for money, the way people's entire demeanor changed when they learned his net worth. I'd seen him struggle to determine who genuinely cared about him versus who wanted access to his fortune. After college, I'd deliberately chosen a career in nonprofit work, using a different last name professionally, living modestly. My father supported my choice, even admired it. "Money is a tool," he used to say, "but it shouldn't define who you are." For 2 years at Whitmore, it worked. I flew under the radar, focused on Lily's healing, and ignored the whispered comments about my thrift store wardrobe and decade-old car. Lily thrived despite the tragedy, making friends, excelling in her classes, slowly becoming the happy child she'd been before losing her mother. Then came the Harrison Industries annual charity gala. Every year, my father's company hosted a fundraising event for various children's charities. It was always held at the city's most exclusive hotel, with tickets starting at $5,000 per person. The guest list included politicians, celebrities, tech moguls, and anyone wealthy enough to contribute significantly to the cause. This year, the beneficiary was the Children's Literacy Foundation, an organization I'd actually worked with during my time in Seattle. My father had asked me to attend, to speak about the foundation's work from a program perspective rather than just a donor angle. I almost said no. The gala world wasn't my scene anymore, and I'd been carefully avoiding any public appearances that might connect me to Harrison Industries. But the Literacy Foundation was important to me, and my father rarely asked for favors. So I bought a simple black dress from Nordstrom, arranged for a babysitter for Lily, and prepared to spend one evening back in the world I'd deliberately left behind. The grand ballroom at the Meridian Hotel was exactly what I expected. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, servers circulating with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people spent on groceries in a month. I recognized faces from business magazines, tech conferences, and society pages. I was standing near the silent auction tables, examining a vacation package to Tuscany, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Oh my God, look who's here. It's Lily Ashford's nanny." I turned to see Monica Whitfield, president of the Whitmore Academy Parent Association, standing with two other mothers I recognized from school events. All three were wearing designer gowns that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "What are you doing here?" asked Catherine Mills, whose son was in Lily's class. "Did someone donate your ticket?" I smiled politely. "I'm here supporting the Children's Literacy Foundation." "How sweet," Monica said with barely concealed condescension. "It's wonderful when the help takes an interest in charitable causes." The third woman, whose name I couldn't remember, looked around nervously. "Shouldn't you be with the other staff? I think the service entrance is around back." The conversation was drawing attention from nearby guests. I could feel people starting to stare, wondering what was happening, why three elegantly dressed women were talking down to someone in a simple black dress. "Actually," I said calmly, "I'm here as a guest." Monica laughed. "A guest? These tickets are $5,000 each. I doubt you make that in 3 months." "Monica," Catherine whispered, "people are watching." But Monica was on a roll. "I mean, it's admirable that you want to better yourself, but there are certain boundaries. This isn't really your crowd." She gestured around the ballroom, at the tuxedoed men and bejeweled women, at the world of extreme wealth and privilege that she believed I didn't belong to. "Perhaps," she continued, "you'd be more comfortable with the catering staff? I'm sure they could use an extra pair of hands." The circle of people around us had grown larger. I recognized several other Whitmore parents, some prominent business leaders, even a city councilman I'd met at previous charity events. Everyone was watching to see how I'd respond to being so publicly dismissed. Instead of responding, I simply smiled and waited, because I knew what was coming next. The lights dimmed slightly, and my father's voice came through the sound system. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 15th Annual Harrison Industries Charity Gala." I watched Monica's face as she turned toward the stage, saw the moment of recognition when she realized who was speaking. Alexander Harrison, CEO and founder of Harrison Industries, one of the wealthiest men in the country. "Before we begin tonight's program," my father continued, "I'd like to introduce someone special. Many of you know me as a businessman, but tonight I'm here as a proud father." The spotlight swept across the crowd, and I knew it was looking for me. 2 years ago, my daughter moved back to our city to care for her orphan niece. She left a successful career to focus on family, choosing love over convenience, sacrifice over comfort. She's worked tirelessly with organizations like tonight's beneficiary, the Children's Literacy Foundation, because she believes every child deserves the opportunity to learn and grow. The spotlight found me, standing in the circle of now silent Whitmore parents. "I'd like my daughter to join me on stage. Victoria Harrison, everyone." The ballroom erupted in applause. I could feel 300 pairs of eyes on me as I walked through the crowd toward the stage. Behind me, I could hear Monica's sharp intake of breath, Catherine's whispered, "Oh my God," and the general murmur of people realizing they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. When I reached the stage, my father embraced me warmly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "my daughter Victoria has spent the last 5 years working in nonprofit management, including 2 years as program director for the Children's Literacy Foundation. Tonight, she'll tell you why this cause is so important, not from the perspective of a donor, but from someone who's seen the impact firsthand." I took the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and found Monica's table. She was staring at me with undisguised shock, her mouth slightly open, her face pale under her carefully applied makeup. "Thank you," I began. "It's wonderful to be here tonight, supporting an organization that's changed so many lives." I spoke for 10 minutes about literacy programs, about children in underserved communities, about the power of education to transform futures. I talked about my work in Seattle, about the kids I'd met who'd gone from struggling readers to honor students, about the teachers who'd dedicated their lives to making a difference. The audience was engaged, applauding at the right moments, nodding along with my stories. But I kept glancing at Monica's table, watching her process the reality that the woman she'd just told to join the catering staff was the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the room. When I finished speaking, the applause was thunderous. My father returned to the microphone. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you all for your generous support tonight. Before we continue with dinner, I want to make one more announcement. He paused, smiling at me. Earlier this week, the Harrison Family Foundation approved a $5 million grant to expand the Children's Literacy Foundation's programs nationwide. Victoria will be overseeing the implementation as the Foundation's new Director of Educational Initiatives. More applause. I hugged my father, waved to the crowd, and walked back to my table, which it turned out was at the front of the room, reserved for family and board members. As I sat down, I could see Monica's table from the corner of my eye. All three women were frantically whispering to each other, occasionally glancing in my direction. Catherine was on her phone, probably Googling my name. The woman whose name I still couldn't remember looked like she was going to be sick. Dinner passed in a blur of conversations with Foundation board members, tech executives, and other guests who suddenly wanted to introduce themselves. Several people apologized for not recognizing me earlier, though none of them had actually interacted with me before tonight. I was polite, gracious, and professional, but I was also quietly enjoying the knowledge that by tomorrow morning, every parent at Whitmore Academy would know exactly who I was. After the main course, Monica appeared at my table. "Victoria," she said, her voice strained with forced cheer. "I had no idea. About your father, I mean, and your work with the Literacy Foundation." I looked up at her calmly. "Why would you? We've never really talked." "Well, no, but I just assumed. I mean, you always seemed so." "So what?" She floundered for a moment. "I think there was a misunderstanding earlier." "What kind of misunderstanding?" "When I suggested you might be more comfortable with the catering staff." "I was joking, of course. Just trying to be friendly." I nodded slowly. "Friendly. I see. And the comment about the help, that was taken out of context. I would never actually think of you as just the nanny?" She winced. "That was poor word choice." "Was it? Because for 2 years, that's exactly how you've treated me. How you've all treated me." Catherine had joined Monica, hovering nervously behind her. "We didn't know," Catherine said quietly. "About your family, your background. If we had known, you would have treated me differently," I finished. "Which says everything about your character and nothing about mine." Monica's face was flushed. "Look, we all make mistakes. Can't we just move forward? Maybe have lunch next week, clear the air?" I considered this for a moment. "Monica, do you remember what you said to me 20 minutes ago? It was a misunderstanding. You told me I didn't belong here. You suggested I join the catering staff. You said this wasn't my crowd." She said nothing. "The only thing that's changed in the last 20 minutes is your knowledge of my bank account. I'm the same person wearing the same dress, driving the same car. But now you want to have lunch." "I was wrong," she said finally. "I'm sorry. You were wrong about my net worth," I corrected. "But you were right about one thing. This isn't my crowd. I don't want to associate with people who judge others based on their clothes, their cars, or their perceived social status." I stood up from the table. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, ladies." As I walked away, I heard Catherine whisper to Monica, "Do you think she'll say something to the other parents?" I didn't need to say anything. By Monday morning, the story had spread through the Whitmore parent network like wildfire. The nanny who turned out to be a billionaire's daughter. The woman they'd dismissed who was now running a $5 million educational initiative. Some parents tried to reach out, suddenly interested in playdates and coffee meetings. Others avoided eye contact during pickup, clearly embarrassed by their previous behavior. A few, to their credit, offered genuine apologies for their assumptions. I handled each interaction with the same quiet grace I'd maintained for 2 years. Polite but distant. Professional but not warm. Because the truth was the gala hadn't changed who I was. I was still the same person who cared more about Lily's happiness than impressing other parents. I still preferred thrift stores to boutiques, still drove my old Honda, still believed that character mattered more than net worth. The difference was that now everyone knew I'd chosen simplicity over luxury, anonymity over recognition, substance over status. And somehow, that made the choice feel even more powerful. 3 months later, Lily and I moved to a different neighborhood. Not because we had to, but because we wanted a fresh start somewhere people would judge us for who we were, not who they thought we should be. I kept the Honda, though. Some things are worth holding on to, regardless of what other people think.